Hello, this is Alex with a quick little heads up. The original planned podcast audio ran into a few issues that made it not entirely workable, so we are falling back on our backup audio that we recorded. This is why redundancies are good, my friends. Hello, and welcome to the Anime Explorations podcast. My name is Alex.
And I'm Tora.
I'm David.
And because it's February, I decided to do another theme month going forward and have February be Fate-uary, where we will be covering for until we run out of stuff, more or less, various installments of the Fate franchise, with a few exceptions.
There are so many. That'll take so many years to keep making them.
Yep. Like, the exceptions, like, I am ruling out the Prisma-Ilia franchise. Because that's a little...
No,
it's a little... Like, there are some comedic bits from that franchise that I do appreciate. Basically, anything involving Rin and like the Rin, Shiro, and oh crap, I forgot the name of the third character. The one with the drill curls.
I feel so bad.
It's back in your brain somewhere.
It's definitely in there. Luvia.
Like, everything with Rin and Luvia is absolute comedy gold. And it is surrounded by so much stuff that is not good. And deeply problematic that it doesn't make it worth sticking out through the rest of it.
Yeah, if you really want to see Prisma-Ilia done really well, just go watch Cardcaptor Sakura.
Yep. Like, Prisma-Ilia is like a skeevy parody of Cardcaptor Sakura.
Things I did not know before going into them. Like, Luke likes Cardcaptor Sakura. Maybe it's okay for our 7-year-old. And then I'm like, you know what? We're going to watch this first. Make sure, monitor. Yep. And then, it's like, no.
I have thoughts on this relating to the anime we actually watched, so we'll get there.
Okay.
Perhaps the darkest entry into the franchise.
So before we get to the show proper, what is your previous experiences with the Fate franchise?
I would say that we've seen most of them.
We absolutely have not.
No?
No.
Okay, well, I feel like I've seen the main ones.
Yes. You saw the original 2006 Fate Stay Night.
And Unlimited Blade Works.
And you saw and Fate Zero.
And Zero.
I don't think you saw the Unlimited Blade Works movie with me, which came before the show, which was not good. Like, they tried, but that's trying to fit what it took them 25 episodes to adapt into 2 hours. So
I have not played any of the visual novels, but David has.
Yes, I have. Played that. I play Grand Order. I've watched the Grand Order adaptations. First Order, Absolute Demonic Front Babylonia, which is just a fun name. Camelot.
So he's more of a deep fan and I'm more of a casual fan.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Okay, so that's a good balance going into this. And we definitely have a bit more of the knowledge of some of the more, not to say ins and outs, but of the characters that are involved with this particular series.
Yeah. For knowledge of the characters, basically you just need to go with the original Fate Stay Night.
Yep. So I came into this with this is a rewatch for me, should mention. Having seen about a similar amount of stuff as what you have seen. I actually, as part of getting my parents into anime, got in. This was their first exposure to Fate in general. I did give them some information about character relationships and that sort of thing going in. But this was their introduction to Fate entirely. So with the context of the additional information that I gave them, they were generally able to kind of pick up some of the in-jokey bits.
And boy, are there a lot of them.
Yep.
Now, this show in particular is really interesting because you could watch it as someone who has no knowledge of the Fate franchise and just be like, okay, this is a sweet little slice of life cooking show, you know?
We should actually probably time a second. We haven't actually mentioned what show we're talking about.
We should probably do that.
Yes, we should. We would just kind of lead in. But we're getting together the show proper. We are talking about today's menu for the Emiya Family, currently available for streaming on Crunchyroll. Quick background on how this aired. This was not a seasonal anime series, as they would normally be done. This aired monthly, starting in January through 2018, with 2 episodes airing in December. One at the start of the month, one at the end. And so that kind of fits in with the structure of the series, with the dishes being relevant for various portions of the year, traditional Japanese holidays, traditional dishes that will be eaten at particular times of the year, and also seasonal ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
And as the title suggests, this is a cooking anime, like with a very heavy emphasis on the cooking process.
Yeah, and unlike some cooking animes that we can name, they didn't sexualize any of the female characters, and it was wonderful.
Right, so that's what I wanted to mention. If you are familiar with other entries in the Fate franchise, it has kind of a swinging pendulum of problematically sexualizing underage characters. Some shows a lot, some shows not so much. This is completely on the non-sexualization side, which I very much appreciated.
I think
that's because the intended audience was a little different.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the closest they came was during the beach or the swim park episode. Yeah, the water park episode with Ryder in a swimsuit. And the joke is just the fact that she's really, really tall.
If anything, there was more sexualization of the male characters in a female gaze sort of way, which I also appreciated. I will look at Lancer in an apron all day. But again, I think that it was just kind of a big tonal shift from other Fate shows, and I think it's because the intended audience was very different.
Minor question, just for clarification purposes. The vibe I got when I watched original Fate Stay Night and a few of the other related works is I always got the impression that like our main like 3 characters, Shiro, Rin, and Sakura, were more towards the 18 side of things, because like a big chunk of the first episode of Fate Stay Night is, hey, you need to get your future plan stuff together, your college tests and all this sort of stuff, which is why like Taiga's dinging him about, hey, you're still talking about being a hero of justice, why don't you join the JSDF and that sort of thing.
No, not so much. I want to say canonically, Shiro and Rin are both. I want to say it's 15 or 16, and Sakura is a year younger than them.
But that's like So, quick talk, because it doesn't actually come up that much yet about how Japanese high school works. For those who aren't familiar, or listeners who aren't familiar, Japanese high school, instead of in the U.S. where it's 4 years, it is 3 years. That first year, what would be our freshman year, which would normally be, I want to say 14, 15 in that range, gets cut off and is instead in middle school.
Yeah, so okay, that's right. But Sakura's a first year there, so she's got to be 16. So that means Rin and Shiro have got to be 17 then.
Okay, yeah, because
along with Shinji and
yeah, because like I've been thinking about like, okay, with where characters are and with what tentative knowledge I have about how Japanese high school is like, usually in like the senior year, that's when you get the heavy push of what college do you want to go to, what future career path do you want to go to, that sort of thing. And I remember that being a big thing coming up in Fate, in the first adaptation of Fate's Stay Night.
Yeah.
So that could have been a good change for that version, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, I don't know that the original was super problematic or super sexualized in that way, but later shows certainly have been, which makes me a little bit leery of the franchise as a whole. Like, what was that one you started me watching that was like literally just fan service?
Oh my god, yeah.
And I was like, nope.
Yeah, that was, I think it's Grand Phantasm, which is the Fate Grand Order sequel to Carnival Phantasm, which luckily was only 4 episodes, and yeesh. Like, Carnival Phantasm had some fan service, but it was mainly just all in-jokes. And Grand Carnival.
Yeah, Grand Carnival.
Just fan service, and not like, haha, funny fan service.
So the reason I think it's important to mention this kind of thinking that I'm going through in my head with the pendulum of sexualization is everything is gathered under the same brand umbrella. So if someone who has just watched the original Fate Stay Night and thinks, "Ooh, that's great, I want to watch one of the other shows," like just picks up Prisma-Ilya and starts watching it, they're gonna be like, "Wait, what?
Yeah,
what's with that?" Like the tonal whiplash on some of this can be pretty severe.
I remember going back to Prisma-Ilya to see, oh right, maybe this is for Luke, and remembering exactly why I didn't finish it the first time.
But this sweet little cooking show is just that. So this one is safe. If you're a woman like me who has been burned out over the years on the sexualization of anime characters, this one is safe, guys. Just so you know.
So, remember when I first watched this show, one of the things that impressed me as well, not just in terms of the lack of sexualization of female characters and stuff for cooking, compared to something like, let's just say the name out right here, Food Wars.
Food Wars, yeah.
Like, we're not an anime, we can say name brands. Is that not only does not only does it not sexualize female characters or any other characters necessarily as much as like Food Wars does, I feel like it shows the work better than Food Wars does. Like Food Wars, they produce these elaborate dishes, both shown in the manga and the anime, but you don't necessarily get a sense of how you would do it yourself. You see characters doing chopping, cooking, doing particular cooking steps and that sort of thing, but you don't necessarily get the sense of what the ingredients are, why they're doing it, for how long they're doing it. And if you've done any cooking in real life, that's a situation where that's necessary information. You might be able to do a rough approximation based on how they depict things, but as plenty of YouTube channels that do, I want to try to replicate this cooking anime, this recipe from this anime in real life, done by professional chefs, that's still pretty hard, and they still screw it up sometimes. By contrast, just in the anime alone, you have a really decent idea of what ingredient, it's clear what ingredients you're using, what steps are being done to make the dish, and even a sense of time. That's missing some fine detail stuff in terms of like amount of like particular spices and that sort of thing. But it does bear mentioning that this is based on a manga, and the manga has full recipes for everything,
which is great.
Yep.
I have a lot to say about this. It's going to sound like I'm going off on a tangent for just a few seconds, but bear with me. So there's a lot of conversation going on right now that has been kind of societally unacceptable to talk about before, which is the concept of domestic labor and its value. One of the things that I really appreciate the show is that it shows Shiro going through all the steps of the domestic labor that is involved in cooking. That involves thinking about what you want to make, making a decision, making a shopping list, going shopping, getting the ingredients, figuring out how you're going to time it. If there are make ahead elements, making them ahead of time, and then like the final step is just putting it all together. So for years, this amount of work in our patriarchal society has been devalued or hand waved away. And traditionally, the brunt of this kind of domestic labor has been borne by women. So it is really refreshing to see a male character who is handling all this, and the genuine appreciation of the people around him in response to it. But then as a woman, I also want to see, the female characters going through that work and getting the same level of appreciation, which happens a little bit when Castor cooks. So I really appreciated that. And I think, like you said, it's important to show all the steps in the cooking process so that you can replicate that at home. Otherwise, it just kind of becomes another Pinterest inspirational mood board that you're like, oh, I wish my life were like that. But realistically, it isn't,
Yeah, for both Castor, Sakura, and Rin, because each
yes,
like basically all of our main three female characters, except for Saber, whose main culinary trait is yes, more food, please. But
yes.
Yes.
And that's fine.
Yeah,
it's refreshing to see that.
Like with a side bit of the running joke of British cooking sucks.
Yeah.
And that's also fine.
But actually, the mentioning Castor, it also bears mentioning is when Castor tries to make the same dish that Shiro's teaching her how to make, it doesn't look as photogenic in the same way. But it is important to mention that they, when they depict it, they also make clear it still tastes good. It still tastes fine. It's the sense of your food may, like, while Shiro may have hit the secret human mundane noble phantasm of unlimited food porn, that if you're not able to make something that looks like it turned out on like what you see in the recipe cookbook, in the cookbook with the professional photography and that sort of thing, it'll still look good, it'll still taste good, and it's fine if the presentation isn't as photogenic as you'd like it to be.
Still make people happy.
Yeah. And like as even Suichiro says, if you're not satisfied with this, you can always make it again.
The show did go to a length. They showed Shiro learning how to cook and grappling with that process when he was younger. And the implication is that he's been working on it and practicing for years. So the show is not out to make you feel bad if your food doesn't look like his, which I appreciate. Because like I said, otherwise it just becomes another mood board for you to aspire to that you'll never quite make it because you don't have the time to put in all these hours. Like... And I think that's, I watch a lot of cooking shows, okay? Let me just put that out there. I've watched cooking shows my entire life. I watched cooking shows for fun for my entire life.
And our son does too.
And I know that there is never going to be a point where I'm going to equal a professional chef because they have spent years and hours and hours and hours practicing these things. But that's okay. If it takes me 3 minutes as opposed to 30 seconds to dice an onion, I'm okay with that. Because the great thing about food is that it's a universal human experience and it makes people happy. And that is just so palpable in this show. The shoujo sparkle that everyone gets when they eat something delicious. It's like you instantly relate to that because everyone has had that experience of putting something in your mouth and thinking like, oh yeah, that is awesome. And it's a comforting feeling. And I think that's one of the things the show does really well is bring you into the joy of sharing and eating food. Which is what all the best cooking shows do, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to talk about any particular recipes? I do have one that I'll start off with Rin's fried rice from episode 8. So completely unintentionally that evening, we had some leftover stir fry from before. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do fried rice for dinner. And I watched that episode. And we also have Kenji Lopez Alt's The Walk, which is a excellent cookbook. I strongly recommend people pick it up. And so for the fried rice, I was interested. I saw how Rin handles adding egg to the fried rice in the recipe, which is she browns the rice, removes the rice from the wok, then starts the egg, and when the scrambled egg is partially done, then she adds the rice. So, out of curiosity, I said, okay, what does J. Kenji Lopez Alt have to say about this? And he has 3 main methods that you normally see used in recipes for doing fried rice. And Rin's is none of the 3. Main weapons are either start the rice, add the scrambled egg directly over it, mix it in. It helps keep the rice moist, but you don't necessarily get the little bits of egg. Or is to start the rice, brown it a bit, move it off to the side, add the egg, let it scramble for a little bit, and then mix the rice in. And then the third one is cook the egg, remove the egg entirely, then add the rice, then put the egg back in as you start doing your add-ins. So it's kind of a combination of 2 and 3, like halfway in between 2 and 3. And I thought that was an interesting, different version of it. Bringing to that.
I also found that interesting, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I've basically always done the adding the egg to the rice as it's cooking method when I'm making fried rice, at least.
It would be interesting to try. I like that she points out that most home ranges don't have the heat required for proper toss the wok stir frying, which is true, but it is fun to do anyway, which she also points out, which is also true. And there's also, you have to consider kind of the difference in your stove versus what they're using in the show, because there's probably a bit of difference there. There are different kinds of ranges, and most American ones are not optimized for woks, sadly.
No. Worth noting also, or worth talking about, is Shiro's kitchen, which is very, very small, especially for the size of his house.
Dude's living in a mansion, and he's got a tiny one-person kitchen, which they do fit 2 or 3 people into nonetheless. But
but the space is just so well laid out. Like, they have a drawer for grilling. They have a grill drawer, and I want one.
It's like a dedicated broiler drawer.
I know.
But they don't have a dedicated necessarily hardware oven. So when we get
take out an electric oven.
Yeah, when they do gratin in episode 5, they basically got a toaster oven for that.
There's a concept in interior design where you talk about the triangle of workspace that happens in a kitchen, which is basically you have a triangle where you want to be able to reach your sink, your fridge, and your counter all in the same kind of area without having to move your feet too much. So in that sense, his kitchen's pretty perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also very organized about his mise en place and how he lays out his ingredients, which helps when you have space issues in your kitchen.
Yeah. I really appreciate how everything was, perfectly laid out, how, he had things ready and in their spots before they were used.
And a lot of people kind of struggle with that. But if you have a small kitchen, it's really worth, getting some mise en place dishes or a big platter where you can put your piles of ingredients that you've chopped so you have everything ready to go. Turntables are your best friend. Sorry, I promise this will not turn into a Kitchen Hacks podcast, even though I have so many.
I mean, it's okay. This is the episode to do that on. So.
But it's also, it serves 2 purposes, right? So it shows that he is an organized cook, and it shows that he knows how to maximize the small space of his kitchen, but it also gives us, the viewer, a very neat and organized look at the ingredients and how they're supposed to look at each stage of the process, which is great.
What other recipes caught your guys' interest or attention, or just episodes in general?
We're seriously considering buying a hot pot
set,
like an electric hot pot.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
hot pot's great community food, and I mean, we haven't had many people over. Thank you, pandemic. But it's just one of the things of there's so many things in there like, oh, that'd be great for having people over, and
it looks good.
Yeah, hot pot, the soba noodle recipe. I love good soba.
That did look good.
Yeah. Honestly, I do want to kind of try that bamboo shoots gratin. Honestly, I'd eat all those recipes.
That's fair. Like the tricky bits for me is I have family members who are allergic to salmon and shellfish, so that rules out the oil baked buttered salmon and mushrooms and the soba, and possibly also the chirashi sushi from episode 3.
That oil baking method for fish will work on most fish.
Okay.
Yeah.
A fatty fish like salmon would, so another fatty fish to sub in would be good, but I've done halibut that way. It's delicious. If that's too expensive, you could just get cod or another very firm fleshed white fish. Sorry, can you tell I watch a lot of cooking shows?
And yeah, worth noting is that the salmon cooking recipe is basically one that's been done in your family for 30, 40 years.
Yeah, I make baked salmon like that all the time, but with kind of an Italian flavor. So with diced tomatoes and Italian seasoning, shallots and lemon.
That's another thing, is a lot of the recipes in the show are not exactly universal, but very similar to other things. So most people who are going to watch the show have at least one of the recipes. They're like, oh yeah, I've done something like that.
Yeah. There's some like basic things that they do in the show that you could then expand into a bunch of other recipes. Like if you learn how to make a good soup broth, either a dashi broth or a kombu based broth, you can then extrapolate that out to make any kind of like, noodle dishes. You can make your at home ramen, which is delicious. Bunch of different things.
And for a similar weight example with when we get the karage on episode 10, like if you're able to pull that off and feel confident doing that kind of fried chicken, you could then extrapolate this honestly to other fried chicken dishes of that variety, both not just Japanese, but also you could take that concept and go, okay, now I'm going to do General Tso chicken or like some of the Chinese American fried chicken dishes, and along from that as well.
Absolutely. And there are so many products now in the grocery store. You don't even have to go to an Asian market anymore to get all of these wonderful sauces and even seaweed and dashi flakes. Just go to the international aisle and see what they got.
Oh yeah, I remember one time we were there and I saw miso and I'm like, wow, that is awesome. I made miso soup that night.
Like probably the bits I would say where you would need to go to an Asian market for would be some, but not all of the vegetables. Like some of the mushrooms, maybe
bamboo shoots.
Bamboo shoots. But like some of the vegetables they would have at most grocery stores. Like I've seen the daikon radish at like Fred Meyer's, which is our for those who are outside the Pacific Northwest, Fred Meyer's is our local Kroger affiliate.
Yep. If you live in a city that is a large city that has a quote unquote Chinatown, like Portland does or San Francisco, go buy vegetables there. It is A, crazy cheap, and B, the variety is beautiful. Great. I've had a great time shopping in Chinatown when I was living in San Francisco. I realized this is not an option for everybody. But if you have one in your town, then I would recommend checking it out.
Or even if you have
when the market days are.
Or even if you have like an H Mart or something like that, they may still have a pretty good selection of Asian vegetables and stuff there as well.
And oftentimes, I mean, I've had to ask, okay, what's the best way to cook this? And just
they will tell you.
Yeah. It's like I'm getting this. I'm trying a recipe off of from the internet. What's the best way to cook this? Because the recipe was not specific.
I enjoyed the scenes of Shiro shopping in the show. I don't know why I like to watch other people go grocery shopping. I think it's just that everyone has to do it. And there's a part of your brain that is like, but could I be doing it better?
And related to that, I appreciate it's a one-off joke from the opening credits, but I still appreciate nonetheless from a universal life experience standpoint, the bit of the opening credits of Rin going shopping, seeing the sale on eggs,
and someone grabs the last one. Yes.
Yep.
It's like, oh. Yep.
Which becomes even better when her dish calls for eggs that we get in the
show. Seeing Lancer's all his different part-time jobs was really fun for me, but I especially liked when he was working at the fishmongers. If you were lucky enough to have a dedicated butcher or fishmonger near you and you love food, it's worth cultivating a relationship with them. They will absolutely tell you how to cook, anything that they sell, and they'll know a lot about it, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So you could say, I need a meal for like 3 people, and I'd like to have leftovers the next day. What reheats really well, and they should be able to tell you that.
It's also really good if after you've made, to use the example of episode 10, if after you've made fried chicken for the entire high school student council, a karage for the entire high school student council, and you realize you need to quickly go make some for your housemate, then for when you dash over and they're about to close, say, hey, real quick.
Right. They're like, oh, I know you. All right. Oh, man, that would have been a lot of work for the student council. You have to keep your oil up to temperature when you fry. So he was doing those like batches. So that probably took him quite a while. Like
constantly
switching out the batches.
Yep.
I was like, I hope they appreciate it. And then of course they do. They have the sparkle. It's pretty great. I really vibed with that student council member who was like, I have to eat this bean bread for dinner again. We've all had moments where we had to we were doing a big project or something and we just didn't have time to cook, and it was like,
the same thing again. Yeah, I mean, I love bean bread.
You would eat that 3 days ago. I don't know.
I would, but I think by day 3 it would definitely be losing its anything will lose its appeal if it's the only thing you've got. Variety is the spice of life, as they say.
I do also appreciate from the Fate supporting cast standpoint, the number of deep cuts to where we get to spend a bunch more time with characters who we don't get to spend a lot of time with on the main stories. A great example is one of the head monks from the temple that Issei lives at, and that Castor and lives at as well, Raycat, where we get several episodes with him. And we barely see him in the main series.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's Issei's older, not exactly brother, but he's a monk who lives at the temple too, so sort of has this sibling relationship, and that's kind of all you know.
But it turns out he's a bit of a foodie.
Turns out most people there are.
The temple has a very nice kitchen.
Yes, although it's implied that a lot of that is because Castor's living there now.
That she bought equipment for it, but the space was presumably there before.
Yeah, there's a big kitchen there, and because it's supposed to be able to feed all of the monks and the guests who come to visit the temple.
I do recommend also reading the manga as well, because while a lot of the recipes that appear in the show are in the currently chapters of the manga or volumes of the manga that have been translated so far, the manga actually has a few recipes that don't show up in the show. Like there's an episode which is basically Rin and sort of those two gals, or three gals, hanging out and having tea, and it has like a recipe for scones.
Nice.
And like this show basically barely touches on baked goods at all. So like that's an additional bit.
Because Shiro doesn't have an oven.
Yeah, that is true. Shiro does not have an oven.
That makes sense, actually.
So it's a nice additional bit there. Like it's actually a bit like I realized like with episode 11 or no 10, the Christmas episode. No 12. Sorry,
12. Yeah.
With the one pan roast beef, where like it's Shiro basically how do you make roast beef without an oven? For that there, which is an interesting bit, which is interesting and fun to watch, but was definitely a like, yeah, that's right. Shiro doesn't have an oven, and his broiler is basically designed for flat things.
Fish.
Yeah.
Fish, maybe you can stick a steak in there, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I mean, just talking about it, I'm getting hungry again.
I know, yeah. After this, we're gonna have a. Don't know what we're gonna make, but we're gonna make something.
Yeah. All right, so we might as well wrap this up. If you enjoyed this conversation, you didn't watch the show. Again, the show is currently streaming on Crunchyroll. The manga is slowly coming out in English. The first 3 volumes have both physical and digital releases. 4 and 5 are on the way. They are licensed by Denpa and are available through Right Stuff and Amazon and that sort of thing. I'll toss them a couple affiliate links in the show notes. I do recommend picking up the manga. As far as next month goes, while Emiya Family has some very light romantic moments, which is appropriate for Valentine's Day being this month with Shiro and Saber. Actually, I didn't talk about this much. I thought about this, but I didn't mention it. So between the time I first watched this and this one, I had read Meisa no Koku. And
oh my god, that was one of my favorites growing up.
Oh my god!
So there's a joke in an episode
somewhere of that entire show.
So there's a joke in one of the volumes of the manga of Meisa no Koku, where our main character is toward the end is trying to propose, and there is, even at the time like the 80s, there's an old and somewhat hackneyed way to propose to someone of saying, telling them, "I would like to eat your miso soup forever," basically. And there are some lines in this between Shiro and Saber, which are basically that.
Yeah, there's a really sweet moment there.
And it's like we don't quite get a like formal romantic proposals to the members of the informal polycule that is Saber, Rin, and Sakura. But it's strongly implied, which isn't fitting for Valentine's Day, I guess.
It's very cute.
Yeah.
If you watched any of the other Fate shows and you came away feeling like that was good, but it was also kind of sad, this is the alternate dimension where everyone's just buddies and they eat together and it's awesome.
Like, Fate is great, but there is so much tragedy in there. Like, in the original Fate Stay Night, there is exactly one ending that Saber actually gets to stay. Spoilers, sorry. Stay in our time, because she is a heroic spirit who has been summoned from the past. There's exactly one where she actually gets to stay. And even then, she's staying with Rin. So
this cooking show in some ways feels like the best fan fiction I ever conceived, where everyone is just happy and hanging out, making good food and eating good food, and Lancer just flits in and out like a cat.
He has gotten so much more in this than he ever got in Fate Stay Night.
Like in any of the versions of Fate Stay Night.
Yeah.
Like, so like, the coffee shop AU is a thing. And in fact, it's even sort of gotten.
Of course.
There's like Legends and Lattes, which is basically a fantasy novel inspired by the concept of the coffee shop AUs. I now kind of want
BT dubs.
I now kind of want the potluck meal AU now.
Yes. That would be great.
I'm trying to figure out potluck, you bring a traditional meal, what each of, the servants would bring.
Oh,
also,
no.
Seeing Berserker cook would be hilarious. Seeing as he is a 8 or 9 foot tall Goliath.
He just walks in with like a full stag over his shoulders and sets it up on a spit.
That would actually absolutely be his move.
And Alexander's like, awesome!
It's Kandar.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
So they have specific versions of.
There.
Yeah. So next month, because Japan is like, Valentine's Day is great. What if we had a sequel to Valentine's Day?
Well, originally, it's not just a sequel; it's a reversal, because Valentine's Day traditionally this has been changing in the recent years, but traditionally Valentine's Day in Japan, it's the girls and the women who give men chocolate. And 1 month later, on March 14th, they have White Day, where the men give chocolate to the women.
Hooray for gender parity.
I was explaining this to our son just a couple days ago when he was asking for some of the chocolate that Tora got me, and I'm like, yeah, sure, of course, but in 1 month I'm going to be giving her chocolate. And I was just doing a whole explanation on it.
Yeah. So as our sequel, my original plan was Gamers, which is a romantic comedy farce. But because, sadly, the license has expired for that, and we're trying to do stuff that's available for streaming, though we may do some exceptions a bit later. This is, instead, we're going to call an audible, and we are doing My Dress Up Darling, which aired last year, and is also available for streaming on Crunchyroll, and has several nominations in the Crunchyroll Anime Awards. I mean, that's just call it the Anime Awards, because there's some High Dive stuff and Netflix stuff on there too.
Should be fun.
Yep. There also is a manga for that as well. But yeah, I will have links in the show notes for where you can watch it. And until next time, if you enjoy the show, please like, subscribe, rate, and review on whatever your pod aggregator platform of choice is. It does help improve our visibility. Mm-hmm. And until later, next time, keep watching anime and good eating.
Bye, guys.
Bye.